Any questions about any of that so far? I know it's a lot, yeah.
So now I feel like, oh, I've been seduced by dullness.
Well, turns out you're not alone. Every one of us has, yeah.
Well, I don't know the way to inquire about this. Should meditation then not have a feeling to it?
Not have a feeling. Yeah, it will have feelings come and go, but you don't have to pay attention to that.
Right. So
Yeah.
Sometimes you say dullness feels fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Like if I say, that meditation was great, it felt really good. Am I just lying to myself that I was enrobed in dullness?
Yeah, and again, anything I could say I can contradict, but for this discussion, I would say possibly, yeah. And you don't want your meditation defined based on how it felt. You want your meditation.
Combat dullness, did you say?
What's that?
How do you combat dullness?
One, by committing to combating it. Intention has so much. Like, okay, I don't want to indulge in dullness anymore. And really the main thing, and remember what I said, is how do you combat anything? Really the main thing is just naming it, becoming aware of it. Do you remember G.I. Joe? He used to say naming is half the naming the problem is half the solution, or something like that. There was this G.I. Joe statement, is naming is half the battle. And I find this in the Rumpelstiltskin myth too, right? Because this woman gives up her child to this demon, and he says she can have her child back if she names him, right? But his name is Rumpelstiltskin, so how's she ever going to name him? And then she's wandering through the forest, and it always, the fairy tales and also the Buddhist stories always have this moment where you have to go into absolute despair before you get the name. Right? So she's in absolute despair, having lost her child. And it's at that moment of absolute despair, wandering in the wilderness, literally. And all of a sudden she sees a little cabin, and she listens, and she hears this little old man in the cabin. She'll never guess that my name is Rumpelstiltskin. Right? It's through that despair, and there's so many teachings in that. And the power of that is, all you need to do is name it. So there's a 1,000-degree difference between somebody who's sitting in dullness and doesn't even know dullness exists versus somebody who's sitting in dullness and been like, oh, I'm sitting in dullness. That's probably all you need to do, is just be able to name what's happening. Oh, there's dullness. And again, I remember I was talking to my brother about this, and I said, one way of finding dullness is to eat a pint of Ben & Jerry's. He's like, man, I should come to your classes. That's a great homework assignment. But really, overeat sometime, but do it intentionally. Maybe it's a bad instruction, but when you're about to have a big meal, and just feel, if you haven't really overeaten, just feel the pleasantness of having a dull mind. And just be like, this feels pleasant. And then notice the territory. Yeah.
Yeah, reading this, and I love reading this, I'm aware that I'm a full-range meditator.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another point. We will flip back, and that's the chutes and ladders idea. Now, the other thing to say is you might be at stage 1 for the next 15 years, and it doesn't mean you're a failed meditator, right? Again, awakening happens any moment. As an example of that, and then let's do a little sit, but as an example of that, we can look at Eckhart Tolle. Many of you know, who's a famous author right now. He was, his awakening experience, which is mappable under Buddhist articulations. But his awakening experience was he was in his bedroom, and he was suicidal because he was so depressed. He was not a meditator. He did not go through the stages, and he just thought, I can no longer live with myself. Okay, that was the main thought. Now then a thought came of, who are these two roommates? Who is the I that can no longer live with myself? And this is a key insight in Buddhism, that we make a mistake about how the I exists. And he thought, I can no longer live with myself. It's tricky, but there's a mistake that's being made in that statement. And that mistake, in that mistake is the foundation of human suffering. That was the Buddha's great discovery. We are making a mistake about how the I exists. And in that mistake is the foundation of human suffering. And that's what happened to Eckhart Tolle, because he said, who is the I that can't live with myself? And then all of a sudden he got insight into the mistake that was being made. And in that insight, he had a permanent cessation of certain mentally afflicted states. And that's what happens in practice. That's why we meditate, is to have that insight. And I know I just talked about not having insight, but here I'm paradoxing, contradicting. In that insight, you do have permanent cessations of certain mentally afflicted states. Not all of them, but certain ones of them, yeah.
When you try to meditate, when you have mental or physical pain,
Yeah.
you focus on that?
Yeah,
Or
so
you
that's,
try to
yeah, there's,
work it through by relaxing?
yeah, the answer is yes to all of that, right? It really depends, and there's a whole nother course we should do someday about just how to work with physical pain. But there's a way of not letting it be as a peripheral awareness, but staying with the object of meditation. So let's say I'm working with the breath, and I'm feeling excruciating back pain. I just use that as a peripheral awareness. And it can be very helpful in the way that a cell phone can be helpful of not, you won't dull out. You won't have a collapse of awareness because your awareness is very present. So there's a way that pain can be really helpful. Now, at one point in my practice, I had to switch my object to my back itself and use the back pain as the object of meditation. And it becomes a very useful tool in that way. I can honestly say that having acute chronic pain for a period of my life progressed me along the path more than anything else did. It was really, really beneficial.
How so?
What's that?
How?
Because, it's a little hard to explain the specifics in a simple way, but basically it's so present that it brings you into contact when you, two ways. One, it keeps you, brings you into mindfulness in a much deeper way. Again, because there's peripheral awareness and attention and awareness. You don't collapse awareness
Right.
because it's always there. And then when I moved my attention to it, there's a de-reification process happening, which is there's that darn word again that we haven't defined.
That we haven't defined.
Yeah, and that's where the real progress comes for me. And so let's do a sit, let's take a break, and then let's finish up with talking
Then
about,
you're going to define reification.
and then we're going to finish up with nothing but reification. Because in a way, it's the most important part of the talks. So let's do a little sit, and then we'll take a break.